Captain Elena Wright massaged her temples as she stared at the main view screen of a UES Odyssey. The vastness of space stretched before them, the darkness interrupted only by distant stars and the occasional nebula glimmering like cosmic jewelry. Their expedition to the Tau Ceti system had been uneventful so far, which was exactly how Elena preferred it. After 15 years of service in the United Earth Space Fleet, she had seen enough excitement to last several lifetimes. "Captain, we're picking up a signal," announced Lieutenant Ramirez from the communication station. The young officer's fingers danced over the holographic interface. "It's not one of ours. Definitely artificial, though." Elena straightened in her command chair. "First contact protocol, everyone. Let's not embarrass humanity today." The bridge crew snapped to attention, their movements practiced and precise. In the century since humanity had unified under the United Earth government, protocols for encountering new civilizations had been meticulously developed and refined, though actual encounters remained exceedingly rare. "Signal strengthening, Captain. They're hailing us directly now," Ramirez reported, a hint of excitement creeping into his voice. "I think I can patch it through." On screen, Elena commanded, adjusting her uniform and standing to meet whoever, or whatever, was calling. The view screen flickered, and the starfield was replaced by the image of a humanoid figure. The being appeared mostly human, with subtle differences, slightly more pronounced brow ridges, a bluish tint to the skin, and ornately styled white hair that seemed to defy gravity. The figure wore what could only be described as an absurdly elaborate uniform, festooned with medals, epaulets, and gold braiding that would make the most ostentatious Earth admiral look underdressed. "Attention, inferior vessel," the figure announced in heavily accented but understandable English. "I am Grand Admiral Zexcaler of the mighty Galactic Empire. Your presence has been detected in territory claimed by His Supreme Magnificence, Emperor Korean the 53rd, conqueror of 1,000 worlds, master of the 7 galactic arms, and eternal flame of civilization." Captain Wright blinked twice, maintaining her professional composure while processing the theatrical introduction. "You are commanded to lower your primitive defenses and prepare to be boarded," the so-called Grand Admiral continued. "Resistance is futile. Your technology is no match for our might. Surrender now, and your species may be permitted to serve as a vassal race rather than face annihilation." Elena opened her mouth to respond diplomatically when she noticed something on the view screen behind the alien admiral. The bridge of his ship was visible, and what she saw made her pause. The control panels were filled with physical buttons and analog dials. A crew member in the background appeared to be loading what looked suspiciously like magnetic tape into a computer bay. Lieutenant Commander Okafor, the Odyssey's chief engineer, made a choking sound beside her. Elena glanced over to see the normally stoic officer pressing her lips together so tightly they had turned white. Their eyes met, and Okafor discreetly tapped her wrist computer, sending a private message to the captain's neural interface. Asterisk. "Are they threatening us with nuclear missiles and vacuum tubes?" Asterisk. A snort escaped from Ensign Patel at the navigation console before he could stop himself. The young officer quickly disguised it as a cough. "Grand Admiral," Elena began, keeping her voice steady and diplomatic, "I am Captain Elena Wright of the United Earth Ship Odyssey. On behalf of humanity, I extend greetings to the Galactic Empire." She paused, choosing her next words carefully. "We are on a peaceful mission of exploration and mean no harm to your civilization." "Exploration?" scoffed the Admiral. "A convenient excuse for espionage. We have monitored your approach and analyzed your vessel. Your crude nuclear propulsion systems and primordial shield technology can offer no defense against our quantum disruptors and antimatter torpedoes." Behind the Admiral, a junior officer was visibly struggling with what appeared to be a paper star chart that had unfurled too far across his console. In the background, another crew member frantically turned a manual crank to adjust what might have been an antenna. Lieutenant Rodriguez, at Tactical, couldn't contain himself any longer. A small laugh escaped before he could clamp his hand over his mouth. The Grand Admiral's eyes narrowed. You dare to laugh in the face of the Empire's might? Perhaps a demonstration is in order. He turned to his crew. Arm the atomic warheads. Target their propulsion systems. Elena quickly raised a hand. That won't be necessary, Admiral. We intend no disrespect. She shot a warning glance at her bridge crew, who were all struggling to maintain their composure. Perhaps we should meet in person to discuss diplomatic relations between our civilizations. We would be honored to host you aboard our vessel, or to meet at a neutral location of your choosing. The Admiral seemed taken aback by this suggestion, clearly having expected either immediate surrender or defiance. After conferring with an aide in hushed tones, he turned back to the screen. Very well. We shall meet aboard your station to discuss the terms of your surrender. Prepare to receive our diplomatic delegation in 6 of your Earth hours. The transmission cut abruptly. The bridge of the Odyssey remained silent for approximately 3 seconds before erupting into laughter. Did you see those control panels? Gasped Lieutenant Rodriguez. I swear my grandfather had a radio that looked more advanced. And they're threatening us with atomic weapons? Okafor wiped tears from her eyes. That's like threatening to sink an aircraft carrier with a crossbow. Captain Wright raised her hands for quiet, though she was smiling as well. All right, people, that's enough. Whatever their technological level, we represent humanity and will treat them with appropriate diplomatic respect. She tapped her neural interface to open a direct channel to Earth Command. Though I suspect this first contact report is going to make for interesting reading. As the laughter subsided, Elena couldn't help but wonder about the disconnect between the Empire's grandiose claims and their obvious technological limitations. Something didn't add up. Either way, the next few hours promised to be some of the most interesting in her career. Lieutenant Ramirez, inform Orbital Station Harmony we're bringing guests. Commander Okafor, I want a full but discreet scan of their vessel. Let's find out what we're really dealing with here. 6 hours later, Captain Wright stood in Orbital Station Harmony's grand reception hall, flanked by her senior officers and a small contingent of United Earth diplomatic staff. The station, a gleaming marvel of human engineering that served as a waypoint and research center for expeditions to nearby star systems, had been hastily prepared for the unexpected diplomatic engagement. The Galactic Empire's shuttle had just docked, and the station's AI had reported that the visitors appeared to be using chemical rockets and what might charitably be described as a rudimentary radiation shield. The engineering team had been appalled at the unsafe conditions and had quietly enhanced the docking bay's safeguards to protect the visitors from their own technology. Remember, Elena whispered to her team, whatever you see or hear, maintain diplomatic decorum. These people believe they are a superior civilization. It would be both unkind and unproductive to suggest otherwise. The massive doors slid open silently, revealing the Imperial delegation. At its head strode Grand Admiral Zexkiller, somehow even more ostentatious in person. His uniform sparkled with metallic threads and gems, and a cape that must have required significant engineering to remain aloft in normal gravity billowed behind him. He was accompanied by a dozen officials in slightly less ornate attire, all bearing what appeared to be ceremonial weapons, though the Earth's security scanners had verified they were indeed functional projectile firearms. "Behold the glory of the Empire," announced the Admiral, spreading his arms wide. "Tremble, humans, as you face the vanguard of the most powerful civilization in the galaxy." Captain Wright stepped forward, offering the universal greeting gesture that Earth diplomats had standardized for first contacts. "Grand Admiral, welcome to Orbital Station Harmony. We are honored by your presence." The Imperial delegation glanced around the reception hall, and Elena could see the moment reality began to clash with their expectations. The station's interior was sleek and minimalist, with programmable matter surfaces that shifted subtly with ambient thought patterns. Holographic displays hovered in the air without projectors, and in the corner, a refreshment synthesizer was quietly preparing customized beverages based on the biological signatures of everyone in the room. A service robot, indistinguishable from a human except for the subtle blue glow behind its eyes, glided forward with a tray of welcoming gifts. small crystalline sculptures that contain complete educational databases on Earth culture and history, programmed to interface with any computer system. One of the Imperial officers gasped audibly at the robot, his hand twitching toward his sidearm. "Is that an automaton?" he asked, voice hushed with what sounded like genuine fear. "This is Harrison, one of our hospitality synthetics," Elena explained casually. "He's completely autonomous, but networked with our station AI for coordination purposes." The Imperial delegation exchanged alarmed glances. "You allow artificial intelligences to move freely among you?" demanded the Grand Admiral, his voice dropping to a horrified whisper. "Have you no fear of the machine uprising spoken of in the ancient warnings?" Elena blinked in surprise. "Our AIs are partners in our civilization, Admiral. They've been fully integrated members of Earth society for over 50 years. This revelation seemed to disturb the visitors deeply, but before the conversation could continue down this path, Elena gestured toward the conference room. "Shall we proceed with our discussions? We've prepared a presentation on Earth and its territories that might provide helpful context for our negotiations." The Imperial delegation followed, though Elena noticed they gave Harrison a wide berth as they passed. Inside the conference room, a full three-dimensional projection of the solar system hovered above the table, showing the network of Earth colonies, stations, and outposts that span from Mercury to the Kuiper Belt. "This is the current extent of human settlement," explained Ambassador Chun-Li, who had joined them for the diplomatic corps. "We've established self-sustaining colonies on Mars, Venus, and several moons of Jupiter and Saturn. Our deep space habitats now support over 3 billion humans throughout the system." "Impressive for a fledgling civilization," the Grand Admiral acknowledged with obvious condescension. "Though mere planets are small conquests compared to the stars the Empire commands." "And how many star systems does the Empire currently govern?" Ambassador Li asked innocently. A moment of uncomfortable silence followed. "Our glorious empire spans 5 complete systems," declared a previously silent member of the Imperial delegation, a thin, hawk-faced individual whose uniform identified him as Chief Scientist Vorix. "With 23 inhabited worlds paying tribute to Emperor Diarachorian." Captain Wright noticed several of her officers exchanging glances. Earth alone had established scientific outposts or mining operations on over 30 celestial bodies within the solar system. "Most impressive," the ambassador replied smoothly. "Perhaps you could share with us the methods of faster-than-light travel your empire employs to administer such a vast territory?" Another uncomfortable silence fell. "The secrets of the Imperial fold drive are not shared with lesser races," the Grand Admiral eventually stated. "But rest assured, our battlecruisers can cross the void between stars in mere decades." Elena struggled to keep her expression neutral. Human vessels routinely achieved 95% of light speed with gravitational wave propulsion, and the theoretical framework for an actual warp drive was well advanced in Earth laboratories. But even with conventional drives, decades for interstellar travel was painfully slow. "Perhaps," suggested Commander Okafor diplomatically, "we could discuss technological exchange in areas of mutual benefit. For instance, we noted your vessel appears to use fission reactions for power. Earth moved beyond nuclear fission over 70 years ago. We primarily use fusion and zero-point energy extraction now." This comment caused visible distress among the Imperial delegation. Chief Scientist Vorix's eyes widened, and he whispered urgently to the Admiral. "You claim to have mastered fusion," the scientist challenged, stepping forward. "Preposterous. The stability problems are insurmountable without certain specialized materials that only the Empire possesses." "Would you care to tour our engine room?" offered Commander Okafor. The Odyssey's secondary power plant is a standard helium-3 fusion reactor. Nothing special by Earth standards. Most of our civilian vessels use similar technology. The Imperial delegation huddled together, whispering frantically. Captain Wright caught fragments like "impossible without the precursor knowledge," and "they must be bluffing." Elena exchanged a glance with Ambassador Li. Something very strange was happening here. Despite their grandiose claims, the mighty Galactic Empire appeared to be at least a century behind Earth technologically in most areas. Yet they somehow possessed faster-than-light capability, albeit an inefficient version. Perhaps, suggested the ambassador, we could take a break from formal negotiations and offer our guests a tour of some of our facilities. Cultural exchange is often the best foundation for diplomatic relations. The Grand Admiral straightened, visibly regaining his composure. Yes, show us these supposed advances. The Empire will determine if you speak truth or engaging in primitive deception. Excellent, said Elena, rising from her seat. We'll begin with Harmony's manufacturing sector. The tour of Orbital Station Harmony's facilities began with the Automated Manufacturing Center, a cavernous space where robotic assemblers and programmable matter fabricators constructed everything from replacement parts to complex scientific instruments. Without human intervention, as you can see, explained Commander Okafor as they watched a molecular printer creating a quantum processor chip layer by atom-perfect layer. Most of our manufacturing is fully automated. The design specifications are created by AI and human engineers working collaboratively. Then the fabrication systems handle production. But who controls the machines? Asked one of the Imperial officers, genuinely confused. We're the laborers who monitor them. The systems are autonomous, Okafor replied. They're overseen by specialized AIs that can handle millions of production variables simultaneously. Human oversight isn't needed for routine operations. The Imperial delegation exchanged troubled glances. And these thinking machines, Grand Admiral Zexcaler asked carefully, they do not resist their servitude? They do not sabotage production or rebel against their masters. Commander Okafor looked perplexed. They're not servants, Admiral. They're specialized intelligences designed for specific functions, with their own rights and compensation structures. Why would they sabotage work they find inherently satisfying? Before the Admiral could respond, Chief Scientist Vorix pushed forward, examining the molecular printer with undisguised fascination. This precision is remarkable, he admitted, watching as the machine assembled structures at the atomic level. Our production facilities require thousands of workers and still cannot achieve such tolerances. This is relatively basic equipment, Okafor said with a shrug. We keep it here for historical interest and educational purposes. Most cutting-edge manufacturing now happens in zero-gravity or vacuum environments using gravitic manipulation rather than physical tools. The chief scientist's face paled slightly. As they continued the tour, moving through hydroponics bays where genetically optimized crops grew at accelerated rates and medical facilities where nanomedicine routinely cured conditions once considered fatal, the disconnect between imperial claims and reality became increasingly apparent. In the station's quantum computing center, Lieutenant Rodriguez couldn't resist a small demonstration. He interfaced with a terminal through his neural link and solved the complex orbital mechanics problem in seconds, displaying the results as a holographic simulation. Impossible, whispered one of the Imperial scientists. Such calculations would take our most advanced computers days to process. Actually, Rodriguez admitted, most of this was done by my personal augment, not the station computer. We all have them. He tapped the small implant barely visible behind his ear. This revelation caused a new wave of disturbed murmuring among the visitors. By the time they reached the medical bay, where Dr. Aisha Sharma was demonstrating a cellular regeneration procedure that could regrow damaged organs, several members of the Imperial delegation had fallen into shocked silence. You mean to tell me, one Imperial medical officer finally asked, that your average citizen can expect to live for over 150 Earth years? Without cybernetic replacement. That's current standard, Dr. Sharma confirmed. Though many choose partial synthetic integration for specialized functions. Our oldest naturally biological human is approaching his 3rd century, though that's still considered exceptional. The Imperial medical officer turned to his colleagues and spoke in what he presumably thought was a whisper, but carried clearly in the quiet room. How can they have advanced this far without the precursor archives? It defies everything we've been taught. Captain Wright, who had been quietly observing the growing discomfort of their guests, decided it was time to address the elephant in the room. "Grand Admiral," she said gently, "I believe we may have a misunderstanding about our relative technological positions. Perhaps if you shared more about your civilization's development, we could identify areas where genuine cooperation might benefit both our peoples." The Admiral's face had gradually lost its arrogant expression throughout the tour, replaced by something that looked increasingly like existential dread. At Elena's words, he seemed to deflate further. "I must consult with my advisors," he said stiffly. "We will retire to our vessel temporarily." "Of course," Elena agreed. "Take whatever time you need. We'll be ready to continue our discussions when you return." As the Imperial delegation hastily retreated toward their docking bay, Elena turned to her officers. "Well," she said quietly, "that was illuminating." "They're terrified," observed Lieutenant Ramirez. "Did you see their faces in the AI core? Like they were waiting for the machines to suddenly attack them." "And that comment about precursor archives," added Ambassador Lee. "I suspect we've stumbled onto something significant here. Have the station's sensors. Continue passive monitoring of their ship," Elena instructed. "No active scans. I don't want them to feel threatened. But if they start powering weapons, I want to know immediately." The Imperial delegation remained secluded on their vessel for nearly 6 hours. When they finally requested to resume discussions, they asked for a smaller meeting with only Captain Wright, Ambassador Lee, and Commander Okafor present. In the private conference room, Grand Admiral Zek Scaler appeared significantly subdued. Gone was the bombastic conqueror. In his place sat a troubled leader facing an unexpected crisis. "Captain Wright," he began, his voice lacking its former theatrical quality, "I must ask you directly. How did humanity develop these technologies independently?" Elena exchanged glances with her colleagues, confused by the question. "The same way any civilization develops, I imagine. Scientific inquiry, experimentation, building upon previous discoveries. Without guidance," pressed Chief Scientist Vorix, who sat beside the Admiral. "Without recovered knowledge from those who came before." Understanding began to dawn. "You're asking if we found alien technology and reverse engineered it," Elena said slowly. "No, Admiral. Everything you've seen was developed by humans or our AI partners through conventional scientific progress." The Imperial officers exchanged troubled glances. "Perhaps it is time for honesty between us," said a new voice. A previously silent member of the Imperial delegation leaned forward, an older woman with silver hair and eyes that spoke of wisdom beyond the others. "I am cultural attaché Lysandra. In truth, I serve as the Emperor's senior diplomatic advisor." She sighed deeply before continuing. "Our civilization's technological development was unnatural. Approximately 4 centuries ago, our exploration teams discovered intact archives and technology caches from an extinct civilization we call the Precursors. These discoveries catapulted our development in specific areas, particularly faster-than-light travel and certain weapons technologies. But we never fully understood the underlying principles," admitted Chief Scientist Vorix, looking pained by the confession. "We could replicate and sometimes modify what we found, but creating new developments proved nearly impossible without the foundational sciences. This is why your civilization appears so uneven," realized Commander Okafor. "Advanced in specific domains, but lacking the supporting technologies that would normally develop alongside them." "Precisely," nodded Lysandra. "We built an empire on technologies we didn't truly understand, guided by fragments of knowledge rather than genuine comprehension. Our educational systems focused on maintaining what we had discovered rather than fostering true innovation." She looked genuinely sad. "We believed ourselves chosen by the universe, the only inheritors of the precursor legacy. We never imagined that another species might develop equal or superior technology entirely on their own," finished Elena. "The Emperor will not accept this reality easily," warned the Grand Admiral. "Many in our leadership remain convinced of our inherent superiority. There are those who will advocate for Desperate measures rather than accept that the foundation of our civilization's identity is flawed. Ambassador Lee leaned forward. Admiral, history is filled with civilizations that faced similar crossroads. There is no shame in acknowledging the past while choosing a better path forward. What exactly are you suggesting? Asked Lysandra cautiously. Partnership, said Elena simply. Not surrender, either yours or ours. A genuine exchange of knowledge and culture that benefits both our peoples. The discussion continued late into the station's night cycle, as the truth of the Empire's situation became clearer. Their society had developed a rigid hierarchy centered around preserving and controlling access to precursor knowledge. The resulting technological stagnation had been masked by territorial expansion and increasingly elaborate displays of imperial might, primarily directed at less advanced civilizations who couldn't recognize the hollow nature of many imperial claims. Those who questioned the system or attempted genuine scientific inquiry often found themselves marginalized or worse. The few breakthroughs achieved by imperial scientists were frequently suppressed if they contradicted established doctrine about how technologies should function based on incomplete precursor records. Our fastest ships still use fusion rockets with primitive radiation shielding, admitted Chief Scientist Vorix, the confession clearly painful for him. Yet we possess a handful of full drive units that can bend space. Technology we can operate, but cannot replicate or repair when they eventually fail. And you've built your entire interstellar presence around these limited assets, realized. Commander Okafor. Yes, acknowledged Lysandra. Our grandest battlecruisers are more ceremonial than functional. Their weapons are designed to intimidate pre-spaceflight civilizations, not engage with a technologically advanced society like yours. Which explains why you approach new civilizations with demands of surrender rather than offers of diplomatic relations, said Ambassador Lee. You can't afford to have your technological limitations exposed. We should return to our ship, the Grand Admiral said, rising suddenly. The Emperor must be informed of developments. Of course, agreed Elena. But please consider what we've discussed. There's a path forward that doesn't require either pride or conflict. After the Imperial representatives departed to their vessel, Earth's leadership was promptly informed of the situation. Over the next 12 hours, a careful strategy was developed. The United Earth government had encountered civilizations at various stages of development before, but never one with such a complex relationship to their own technology. When communications resumed, Captain Wright was authorized to make a formal proposal. Earth would help the Empire transition to a more sustainable technological foundation, beginning with basic improvements to their existing systems. In exchange, the Empire would share access to their precursor archives for scientific study. Most importantly, the arrangement would be presented publicly as a mutual exchange between great civilizations rather than as assistance, allowing the Imperial leadership to save face. Not everyone in the Empire welcomed this proposal. A faction of hardliners, led by Imperial Security Director Malvex, argued passionately against accepting help from upstart humans who might be lying about their capabilities. They haven't even seen our primary battle fleet. Malvex insisted during a heated exchange. One demonstration of our might would force them to recognize our superiority. The confrontation came to a head when, against direct orders from the Grand Admiral, Director Malvex commanded an Imperial cruiser to target Orbital Station Harmony with its planet-killer nuclear missiles. Weapons considered devastating by Imperial standards, but practically antique by Earth measures. The station's automated defense grid detected the weapon's lock immediately. Before anyone could react, the defensive AI deployed a standard countermeasure, a focused graviton field that simply negated the physical connection between the cruiser's targeting system and its launch mechanisms. Director Malvex's face appeared on the main view screen, initially triumphant as he announced the imminent demonstration of Imperial might, then increasingly confused and finally furious as repeated launch commands produced no results. "What have you done to our weapons?" he demanded. "Nothing permanent," Captain Wright assured him calmly. "Your systems will function normally again once you stand down from offensive posture. We have no desire for conflict, Director." The Grand Admiral's face appeared on a separate channel, his expression a mixture of anger and embarrassment. Director Malvex acted without authorization. His commission is hereby terminated. The failed show of force became the turning point. With the hardliners discredited, the path to cooperation opened. Over the following weeks, joint working groups were established. Earth engineers discreetly helped upgrade the Imperial vessel's life support and propulsion systems, while Imperial scholars shared what they knew of the precursor archives. Chief Scientist Vorix nearly wept with joy when Commander Okafor's team improved the efficiency of their fusion reactors tenfold in just 3 days, an advancement that would have taken Imperial science decades to achieve, if ever. We've been taught that innovation happens in great leaps, delivered by exceptional minds chosen by destiny, he confessed as he watched the upgraded reactor power up. The idea that progress comes through small improvements, collaborative effort, and systematic inquiry. It changes everything about how we approach knowledge. Most touching was the reaction of young Imperial officers when Earth opened its educational databases to them. Concepts that had been treated as mystical or forbidden in Imperial society, quantum mechanics, genetic engineering, artificial intelligence theory, were presented as standard subjects that human children routinely mastered. Your 12-year-olds understand atomic theory better than our senior scientists, marveled one Imperial education officer. Not because they're inherently superior, but because they're taught to question and explore rather than memorize and recite. The Imperial vessel, rechristened from the militaristic subjugator to the more aspirational Horizon, prepared to depart after a month of cultural and technological exchange. Its systems have been subtly upgraded, enough to ensure the crew's safety and comfort without disrupting the Empire's developmental path too drastically. More importantly, the vessel carried home the beginnings of a new philosophy. That true advancement came not from hoarding knowledge or claiming superiority, but from the humble pursuit of understanding and the willingness to learn from others. On the observation deck of Orbital Station Harmony, Captain Elena Wright stood beside Grand Admiral Zek Skiller, now dressed in a noticeably simpler uniform, watching as the Imperial crew made final preparations for departure. Your civilization has given us more than technology, the Admiral said quietly. You've given us permission to acknowledge our limitations, something that has been forbidden for generations. Every civilization has its challenges, Elena replied. Earth went through its own dark periods before we learned that cooperation yields better results than competition in the long run. Some will resist the changes we bring home, Zexcaler admitted. The identity of the Empire has been built on the myth of our inherent superiority. Dismantling that belief will not be easy. Revolutionary ideas rarely are, agreed Ambassador Lee, who had joined them for the farewell. But they take root where they're needed most. As the Imperial vessel prepared to depart, a small ceremony was held. Earth presented gifts of knowledge, databases containing foundational scientific principles, historical analyses of how various Earth cultures had managed technological transitions, and basic educational frameworks that emphasized critical thinking over rote memorization. The Empire, in turn, shared detailed star charts of regions humans had yet to explore and copies of the most comprehensible precursor texts they had translated. Perhaps next time we meet, suggested Elena, as they said their final goodbyes. It will be as equals exploring the unknown together rather than as assumed conquerors and conquests. I would welcome that day, replied Lysandra with a genuine smile. Though I suspect by then, we'll still be working to catch up to wherever humanity has advanced to. Don't be so sure, Commander Okafor said warmly. Now that you're asking the right questions instead of simply following old answers, you might surprise yourselves with how quickly progress comes. The Horizon departed in a much more graceful manner than it had arrived, its engines burning cleaner and its radiation shielding functioning at parameters that actually protected its crew. Earth vessels escorted it to the edge of the solar system in a gesture of respect rather than supervision. Back on the Odyssey, now preparing to resume its original mission, Captain Wright sat in her ready room composing her final report on the encounter. In conclusion, she dictated to her neural interface, the Galactic Empire represents a unique case study in technological development. Their uneven advancement demonstrates the pitfalls of technological adoption without fundamental understanding. However, their willingness to eventually acknowledge their limitations and accept assistance suggests a cultural resilience that may serve them well in their transition. She paused, considering her final thoughts. Perhaps the most valuable lesson from this encounter is not about technology at all, but about humility. Both humanity and the Empire have had to confront uncomfortable truths. For us, that we are not alone in mastering faster-than-light travel. For them, that their entire civilization was built on a foundation of misunderstood inheritance rather than genuine achievement. The laughter that initially greeted their grandiose claims was understandable, but ultimately unimportant. What matters is that when faced with truth, both sides chose understanding over conflict, cooperation over pride. As humanity continues to expand into the galaxy, we would do well to remember that true strength lies not in technological superiority, but in the wisdom to use what we know for the benefit of all, and the courage to acknowledge what we don't yet understand. She closed the report and gazed out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the citizens of the Galactic Empire were beginning a transformation, one that might eventually lead them to become the advanced civilization they had only pretended to be. And perhaps in that journey, humanity might find not the inferior vassals that the Empire had initially sought to claim, but genuine partners in exploring the vast unknown that still surrounded them all. As the Odyssey's engines powered up for departure, Elena smiled at the thought that sometimes the most powerful weapon in first contact situations wasn't technology at all, but simply the ability to laugh at the absurd and then move forward together with goodwill and understanding.